I'm Jade. Welcome to my channel, Refinish with Jade, where it's all things furniture flipping and DIY fun. In today's video, we're going to break down step by step how I created this beautiful Barbie-inspired dresser behind me for a 5-year-old little girl. So let's get started. It's time for a Barbie makeover. Before we could get into the fun and exciting part of the makeover, we just had to disassemble it. I removed the mirror and then removed all the original hardware. I needed to give the piece a good deep clean, so I grabbed out my crystallized degreaser called triclinium, a rubber glove, and I just mixed this with water until it dissolved. I used the sponge to clean the piece thoroughly to remove any residue that was left on the piece before I started painting. I often get asked why it is that I clean the piece twice, once prior to sanding and then once after sanding. The reason why I clean the piece prior to sanding is because if there is any oily residue on the piece, first off, you're going to end up gunking up your sandpaper and you're going to need to use a lot more sanding pads. And second off, that can often get pushed into the timber and we want to try and avoid that. I grabbed out a carbide scraper and got to work. Barbie supervisor was on the job. Whenever I refinish furniture, I usually try and create a contrast in materials. What I mean by that is that I like to have a component of the piece that is timber and a component of the piece that is painted. So for this piece, I decided I was going to leave the top of the piece as exposed raw timber and paint the rest in multiple shades of pink. After all, it is a Barbie-inspired dresser for a little girl who just is obsessed with pink. Therefore, there needed to be a lot of pink incorporated. When I'm sanding, I usually work my way down the grits, starting at an 80 grit, moving to a 120 grit, and usually finishing off with a 240 grit. Now it was time for the required scuff sand. I always scuff sand the entire piece, usually using a 120 grit, just to rough up the whole surface ready for paint. If you're watching this video because you have a Barbie obsessed little girl at home as well, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed like it's not possible for you. I'm using an orbital sander here to scuff up the entire piece. However, this is more than possible with just a hand sanding pad that you can buy from the local hardware store. If you have no tools and you are creating this piece, all you're going to need to do is adjust certain components. You're not going to be able to have any raw exposed timber. You're just going to have to paint the entire piece pink, and then you can incorporate effects or different contrasts through the colors of paint, through the stencils, through the elements that you're adding to the piece, not necessarily needing to use power tools to create them. When you're scuff sanding, you're just going to sand everywhere that you want to paint. For me, that was the front of the drawers and around the outside of the mirror, as well as the body of the actual piece. I just had to give the piece a good, nice deep clean again to remove all of that sanding dust and make sure it is crystal clear before I start applying any paint. Here is the evidence why it's important to clean again after sanding. All of this sanding dust would be in your paint finish if you didn't wash it off. Once it's all clean, you're going to grab out your masking tape and then apply the masking tape to all of the sections where you're going to leave raw exposed timber. And now it's time to apply the primer. Here I'm using the Zinser Bin Shellac Primer, which is an amazing adhesive primer. It does also have stain blocking properties. However, because I'm not painting this piece white, I'm not going to need to worry too much about the stain blocking properties. Once the priming is complete, you want to grab a 400 grit sandpaper, just a small piece, fold it up, and then use that to sand the primer and create a really nice smooth surface. You're just going to give a light sand over the whole piece to remove any dirt, lumps, roll of fluff, anything like that that got into your primer. Once the primer has been applied, it's usually then easier to see any imperfection or dents in the piece. Grab out your wood filler or any kind of filler and just fill in on all those imperfections. Once the filler's dry, you're just going to grab your sander and sand off all the excess filler to make it nice and smooth. And lastly, before you start painting, you want to just check that your primer is adhered well. Do a scratch test in multiple places and make sure none of it scratches off. Today I'm painting this piece in Fusion Mineral Paint Rose Water. I needed some paint brushes and a mini roller and roller head and a roller tray. I applied my first coat of paint over the entire piece. Here you'll just see that I use a paintbrush on most of it and sometimes use a roller. But by now you'll be able to see that it doesn't actually require a huge amount of skills or experience to be able to create a one-of-a-kind piece of furniture. I really do believe everyone is capable of refinishing furniture. It's just a matter of knowing what steps to take and having a few minimal tools to be able to complete the transformation. If you would love to know the steps and make sure you don't miss any of the required components, I've got a free furniture flipping checklist that you can download from in the description. It goes through all of the steps required that you can use as a checklist so that you can complete your next or your first DIY project, knowing that you're not going to miss any of the most important steps. You'll be able to see that I'm now painting the front of the drawers and the outside of the mirror in a much more Barbie-esque pink. It's a much brighter colour that my daughter absolutely loves. Now I'm painting on the second coat of paint. I apply the second coat of paint everywhere to make sure I have a really nice thick coverage. Then it was time to remove the masking tape, which I find so satisfying. Because I decided not to tape up around the edge of this timber top, I then could see there was a fair bit of bleed through. I chose to do it this way because I knew that I could just take my sander and re-sand that edge, which would then create a really nice smooth edge that doesn't have any bleed through or paint on it, so that I could apply the timber stain. For this piece, I selected a driftwood timber stain and glaze. It's really simple to apply. I just paint it on and then wipe off the excess before it fully dries. Barbie's always a little bit extra, and well, so is my 5-year-old daughter. So I wanted to create something really unique and stand out. I selected a beautiful floral peel and stick stencil. They are so easy to apply. All you do is peel it off and stick it onto the place where you're wanting to have the stencil. Then you're going to get the paint and paint in the stencil and peel it off. I selected the same baby pink color that I used on the body of the dresser to match these drawers into the dresser body a little bit more. When I started to put the dresser back together again, I decided that this hot pink on the mirror looked a little bit odd because it didn't quite match the drawers hot pink anymore because it didn't have the stencil design. So I thought, why not add the stencil design to the edge of the mirror as well? With these peel and stick stencils, it really is just a matter of peeling it off to reveal the beautiful stencil design underneath. You don't very often get bleed through because they are stuck down around where the stencil pattern actually is, which makes it a lot easier for beginners. If your piece is for a child like mine is, you're going to need to protect the paint as much as possible because we all know kids are not exactly careful when it comes to most things. I'm applying a clear polyacrylic top coat over the paint. This is a water-based that I am applying over the paint just to give it that little bit more protection from scratches and fingerprints and anything that could happen to the paint. For the timber top of the dresser, I needed even more protection. My daughter has all kinds of plans that she is going to use this dresser for, including to apply her makeup. And if you've ever seen a 5-year-old apply makeup, it usually turns out looking a little bit like clown makeup, and there is usually makeup everywhere. This needed to be extra strong, so I selected a clear oil-based polyurethane for the top of this dresser. I'm going to apply 3 coats of this for extra protection, and that way I can just wipe it clear with water no matter what my daughter spills on it. Since Barbie is all things glam, I grabbed these crystal knobs and some snap-off screws. I just needed to snap the screws to the right size, and then I'm going to install these knobs on all of the drawers. Are you ready for the grand reveal? Here it is. This is the end result. It's got style, it's got glam, and it is every little girl's dream. If you love this makeover, make sure you hit like and subscribe, and be sure to share it with a little girl who would love this dresser.